Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Today we'll start the prose piece The Legend Behind a Legend by Hariharan Balakrishnan. So, before we proceed to the topic, let's get to know about the author, the writer Hariharan Balakrishnan. Well, Hariharan Balakrishnan is a writer and a columnist, someone who writes for newspapers and magazines. From his childhood, he had an affinity for English language and also shared a love for the ambience of the lush green nature. That is, from a very young age, he displayed an affinity, a love for English language. Apart from that, he also showed a love and respect and a closeness towards the nature, towards the environment. And we'll see how this is reflected in this particular prose piece. He has written multiple articles on natural phenomena and the human predicament when caught in the unexpected situations. Most often, we come across the works, the literary writings which describe the human predicament. When man is caught at the crossroads, when he cannot decide what to do, he is left in the lurch. He is left clueless. And Hariharan Balakrishnan also writes about those things. That is the human nature when it is caught in the predicaments. Then, The Legend Behind a Legend was published in the literary page of the Hindu newspaper on 22nd January 2006. So, it was published in the Hindu newspaper on 22nd January 2006. So it was published quite a few years back, and it is not a recent article. And the things that we'll be discussing, the legends we'll be discussing about, are even older. They date back to much, much older times. So let's continue. But before we proceed to the prose piece, The Legend Behind a Legend, I'd like to discuss about one particular word, and it is the word legend. What does the word denote? What do you mean by legend? Well, the word legend carries a plethora of meanings. Legend refers to a story coming down from the past. It is rooted in the Latin word legenda, which denotes things to be read. And a legend also refers to a story about a famous person. People are also referred to as legends if they achieve unprecedented success. So, legends, basically, the word legend comes from the Latin word legenda. And because of the meaning it conveys, that it refers to is to be read about. It refers to the things that deserve to be read about. So it describes famous and important events, occurrences, and people, personages who hold significance. And those events come down from the past. Those events and the people belonging to the past, they are called as legends, who have achieved unprecedented importance or success. In this prose piece, The Legend Behind a Legend, we'll be discussing about two legends. One is the tigress Khairi, and the second one is the man who is behind the legend. And he is none other than Saroj Raj Chaudhary, the man who rescued and saved Khairi as a cub. But this prose piece, it is about the relationship that grows and develops between humans and animals. So this prose piece can also be read from the perspective of eco-criticism. Now, what is eco-criticism? Eco-criticism is the study of the relationship between humans and the environment or ecology through the lens of literature. And an aspect of eco-criticism is human animal studies or animal studies that analyzes and studies the relationship between humans and animals in particular through the lens of literature, through the works of literature. And in this instance, the legend behind a legend, it also portrays and describes the relationship between a human being and the animals, and in particular, a tigress. Since prehistoric times, man has depended on animals and birds for his sustenance. When man was a hunter and gatherer, he depended on his natural surroundings for his sustenance. He did not cultivate, he did not grow crops, rather he hunted birds and animals, and he gathered fruits and berries and vegetables from the plants. In that way, he sustained himself. So, that developed a close knit relationship with the environment or the ecology. He learned that he had to live in harmony with his natural surroundings, otherwise, he could not survive. The relationship was based on sustainability and mutual respect. Ancient religious beliefs revered nature, and animals were an important aspect of nature worship. If you look at the various religious beliefs of the Native Americans and Africans and even Indians, you'll find instances of nature worship. From the ancient times, human beings learned to revere and respect nature. They worship the sun, they worship the moon, they worship the natural elements, and even the non-human life forms like trees, birds, and animals were also incorporated into the system of religious beliefs. If you take the example of Hinduism, you'll find many instances where animals are considered to be sacred. Animals are worshipped, and the same goes for the native religions of Africa and America, where the creation of the world, the creation myths, involve various animals like rabbits, tortoises, and boars and others. Even the bison, the wild bison, is held to be a sacred animal in America. So, all those animals had cultural and religious significance for the people, the human communities. And this was the root of a harmonious and sustainable relationship between the human community and the non-human nature. Through religious belief systems like totemism and animism, the human communities learned to respect the natural world and wildlife. Now, I'll explain two terms. One is totemism and the other one is animism. What is totemism? Totemism is the religious belief practiced by the Native Americans, where the native communities identified themselves with a particular animal, such as the wolf, such as the owl, and that particular animal was the community's totem or sacred figure. Likewise, animism was the belief that the that God resided, or the supreme force resided in all life forms, whether it was animate or the humans or the non-humans. So Africans, they practiced animism to a great extent. African tribes, even today, they have those practices, the customs, the rituals, revering and worshipping nature, because they believe that the spirits, they reside in all aspects of nature. So it is of utmost importance to revere nature, to consider it to be sacred, so that the bond that is present between the humans and nature will be sustained. However, during the Middle Ages, hunting emerged as a sport for the aristocrats. If we go back to the Roman Empire, the Roman civilization and the Roman Empire, then we can mark a steady decline, a degradation in the relationship between humans and non-humans. Romans, they had the Colosseum, the great amphitheater, which was the scene of many battles, many fights between gladiators and animals. In fact, animals were specially procured from Asia and Africa to satisfy the bloodthirst of the Roman public. People enjoyed the slaughter of animals in those gladiatorial combats. And that began the rise of the blood sports. And it continued in Europe and it continues even today. So, during the Middle Ages in Europe, it was considered to be a popular sport. Hunting and with the help of dogs, and cruel sports like boar baiting and bear hunting, those were frequently practiced by the Europeans. And even today in England, it is a common sport, duck shooting. Like participants would gather and they would shoot the ducks, and the winner would be the one with the most number of dead ducks. So for the popular enjoyment and fun, they're willing to destroy non-human lives. The lives of animals and birds are of little to no importance for the aristocrats of Europe. Not only that, but also a great market for the wildlife products is rampant across the world. So, mostly in Asia, in China, Cambodia, and Thailand, we find that those markets are active. So, what are those markets? They sell those animal body parts like the fur, the claws, the bones, the tusks, the ivory, the teeth, all those things. They are practiced in traditional medicines. And to supply the market, hunters and poachers illegally kill the animals. Even elephants, boars, tigers, leopards, lions, and many other animals and birds are hunted to feed the demand that is present in the market. And this, what has it led to? It has led to the extinction of many animal and bird species. Well, I will mention a couple of species that have become extinct due to human activities. Deer, boars, bears, and several other life forms were hunted down for fun. Growing human populations also heightened the conflicts between humans and the wild animals. So, another factor that has resulted in the conflict between humans and non-human life forms is the growing human population. Human population is growing with each passing day, showing no signs of any decline. And with the growing population, there is also an increasing demand for agricultural land and land for housing the ever increasing population. Where will the land come from? So humans turn towards the forests. Forests are cleared off. Where will the animals go? Naturally, that triggers a conflict between humans and the animals. And eventually, the animals are declared as pests, as a menace to human interests, and they are killed by the humans. Destruction of forests, extensive hunting, and disruptive climate changes have pushed several species to the brink of extinction, whereas many other species have gone extinct. Well, some of the factors that have led to the extinction of many animal species include the deforestation, then hunting, and finally climate change. Obviously, because of human activities, because of industrialization, because of deforestation, it has taken its toll on the climate. The climate is no longer the same as it was. It is changing with each passing day. So as a result of the climate change, the animals are the biggest victims. They cannot adapt to the changing climatic conditions. So slowly they decline and go extinct. The Tasmanian tiger was hunted to extinction in Australia. It was found in Australia, and as you might be familiar with the fact that Australia was a European colony. When the settlers settled in Australia, they began their farming and they kept those livestock. Now, it was formerly a place of wilderness. So, Tasmanian tigers and kangaroos and other life forms, they used to roam around freely. Now, suddenly, farmers come, clear away the forests, and cultivate the land. They keep the livestock, sheep, goats, cattle, etc. Now, this brings the animals into conflict with the humans. The Tasmanian tigers, they used to hunt the cattle, the goats, the sheep, and as a result, the farmers took measures to ensure the extinction of the species. Well, since the animal posed a threat to human interests, it was considered to be a menace, and hence the farmers, they killed the animal to the point of extinction. Well, who is to be blamed? It was a place of wilderness. The land, the animal and had adapted to the land. Suddenly, it finds itself at a crossroads where it does not know what to do, because he sees the land is changing, the demography of the land is changing. Formerly, the forests that had been present, they are disappearing. What is it supposed to do? Because of this conflict, because of the conflict with the humans, it faced extinction. Another species that became extinct is the dodo. Now, the dodo is a bird, a large flightless bird. And when the settlers, they settled in Mauritius. They brought with them other predatory animals like dogs and cats. Formerly, the dodo had no natural predator, but since it could not fly, those animals like the cats and the dogs, they hunted the dodo to the point of extinction. So this is another illustration of the to the extent of human influence in the extinction of animal species. How human activities have destroyed the ecology, the environment, and led to the extinction of animal species. So, let's discuss about the position of tigers in India. Because this legend behind a legend is about a tigress. So we should have a fair bit of idea, a fair bit of knowledge about tigers. What do they mean to the Indians? Well, first and foremost, tiger is the national animal of India. Since it is the national animal, it has enjoyed a position of importance in Indian society. Through the implementation of Project Tiger, extensive measures have been taken to conserve tiger populations. The Project Tiger was introduced in India specifically to preserve the tigers, to conserve tiger populations. Various wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, and tiger reserves were set up and established to preserve the tiger populations. In India, tiger occupies a position that is socially and culturally significant. Local folklore, myths, and legends frequently make mention of tigers, which underscore the importance of tigers for the Indians. So, if you look at the local folklore, the local stories, then the myths and legends of various communities, the tribes and the ethnic groups of India, they make frequent mention of tiger. The tigers, because the ethnic groups, they live in close proximity with the natural environment, hence they have incorporated the animal species, the non-human species, into their culture. Through their stories, their cultural beliefs, and their religious practices, they revere and idolize the animals. They worship the animals and have immortalized them through their works of culture and religion. Now, India is the second most populous nation in the world after China. The growing population has led to a growing demand for land. As I discussed, with the growing population, there is always a growing demand for land. So, India, being the second most populous country, also faces a growing demand for land. As a result, forests are cleared to make room for agricultural lands and housing spaces. With the loss of their natural habitats, tigers face the threat of extinction. Since forests are cleared off, the natural habitats of the tigers are diminishing with each passing day. As a result of this, the tigers' populations are also facing the threat of extinction. Hunting is also active in India. Tigers are hunted for their furs, the skin. So, because of this, Project Tiger aims to conserve tiger populations by setting up tiger reserves. In Odisha, Similpal National Park has been declared as a tiger reserve, and it has managed to preserve the tigers in the wild. It has gained fame for Khairi, a domesticated tigress who has achieved the status of a legend. Saroj Raj Chaudhary, an officer of the Indian Forest Service, was the man behind the legend. So, now begins the story of the legend behind the legend. The legend is Khairi, the tigress from Similipal, and the man who is behind the legend is Saroj Raj Chaudhary, an officer of the Indian Forest Service who has worked actively to preserve the tigers. Now let's begin with the legend behind a legend. Khairi made the entire forest where she lived famous. She lived in Jasipur, Khairi Jasipur, that is present in Mayurbhanj. Similpal is present in Mayurbhanj, in the district of Mayurbhanj, and Khairi, the forest that she lived in, where she lived, she made it famous because something like a domesticated tigress was entirely unheard of. People had no idea about a domesticated tigress. They didn't know that tigers could be domesticated. Normally, the idea people have about tigers is that of a large, ferocious, and aggressive wild animal. But that notion has been debunked by Saroj Raj Chaudhary, who showed the world that tigers could be domesticated. They could be like cats. Just like a cat, a pet cat, tigers could also be tame and docile, domesticated. That brings to my mind another example, the Temple of Tigers in Thailand. That shows another instance where tigers can be domesticated. The Buddhist monks of the temple, they rescued those tiger cubs and domesticated them. And that shows that Khairi was not the only example. If animals are raised with love, affection, and care, then even the fiercest of animals can be tamed. They'll develop a relationship with the humans and the animals. Khairi made the entire forest where she lived famous. She was not a bandit queen, but Khairi, the tigress of Jasipur. Well, when it comes to the reference about forests, people normally assume that Khairi might be a bandit queen. She might be a bandit queen inhabiting the forest and terrorizing the locals, robbing from them, stealing from them. But no. Instead, she is a domesticated tigress. It was exactly 25 years ago when I spent 2 days and 2 nights with Khairi and the menagerie of Saroj and Nihar. Well, 25 years ago, from 2006, the narrator, the writer, Hariharan Balakrishnan had spent 2 days and 2 nights in the company of Saroj Raj Chaudhary and the animals he had kept. As I mentioned, Saroj Raj Chaudhary was an officer in the Indian Forest Service. So, being posted in the National Park of Similipal, he came into frequent contact with animals. As a result, he frequently rescued the animals that were ill or injured, and he kept them with him. He raised them with love and care. As a result, there grew a special bonding between him and the animals. I had read a small news item in the Statesman about the latest exploits of a domesticated tigress in the Similipal forests of Odisha. In the Statesman newspaper, Hariharan Balakrishnan had read about the exploits. He had read an article about Khairi, the domesticated tigress in the forests of Similipal. Suddenly it struck me that this was happening in my own state. Well, this was an unusual piece of news, and it was happening in his own state. He belongs to Odisha, and something unusual like a domesticated tigress could be found in his own native state. I thought, why not attempt to experience it myself? Why shouldn't I experience it myself? Let me go and check it out. Let me go and see for myself. What sort of a creature is this domesticated tigress? Let me go and see for myself how Saroj Raj Chaudhary has managed to tame one of the fiercest animals of the forest. I spoke to N.S. Iyengar, a senior journalist in Berhampur, and a few other elders. I was told that Khairi was under the care of a rather gruff and tough man called Saroj Raj Chaudhary, who brooked no nonsense and suffered no fools. So he began to gather and collect information about Khairi and the man who kept Khairi. And from their inputs, from the information that they provided, he learned that Khairi was under the care of Saroj Raj Chaudhary. And from the information that he gathered, Saroj Raj Chaudhary was a gruff and tough man with a no-nonsense approach. He was someone who was not to be messed with. He was a harsh and strict man according to the persons whom Hariharan Balakrishnan asked about for the information. I got his address and wrote asking if I could visit him. But he decided that let me visit Saroj Raj Chaudhary. Let me see for myself. Let me check out the domesticated tigress. So Hariharan Balakrishnan obtained Saroj Raj Chaudhary's address and wrote a letter to him asking him if he could visit. If he could visit the place, if he could visit Jasipur and see the tigress for himself. For good measure, I referred to a few itinerant articles I had written for Indian magazines to create a good impression on Saroj. The writer mentioned a few articles in the letter that, see, I have written those articles in order to create a good impression. It was a shot in the dark, and I did not really expect to hear from him. He was really not expecting to get a response, since he had learned from various people that Saroj Raj Chaudhary was a gruff and tough man with a no-nonsense approach. He did not expect to hear or to get a response from him. However, to his surprise, within a week, he received a response. He received a letter in response from none other than Saroj Raj Chaudhary. But to my utter delight, I got a letter within a week inviting me to Khairi Jasipur, giving precise instructions about how to reach there. So, Saroj Raj Chaudhary wrote him a letter inviting him to visit Jasipur, and along with the letter he provided him with the instructions how to reach the place, because it is a remote place. So instructions are required for the writer about how to reach that particular place. Mr. Chaudhary also asked me to let him know in advance how and when I was reaching. He also asked the writer, Hariharan Balakrishnan, if he could let him know in advance when he would be reaching the place, so that he could make arrangements for him. I gave him a date and said I'd be taking a bus from Bhubaneswar on a particular night. So the writer gave him a particular date that I'll be leaving Bhubaneswar on this day, and he would be going by bus. So he packed his bags and set out for Khairi Jasipur. I packed my bag, took the train and boarded the overcrowded bus from Bhubaneswar. The bus was overcrowded. So it was the journey was not altogether a pleasant one for the narrator, for Hariharan Balakrishnan. I arrived sometime before 4 a.m. It is 4 a.m. in the morning, or rather we can call it as almost night. An hour when most people would be asleep, and he gets down from the bus, wondering where to go in that semi-darkness. Now he gets down from the bus and he does not know where to go. It is a completely new place for him. So where will he go? He is at a complete loss. But to his surprise, to my utter surprise, within a minute there was the click of boots and a voice welcoming me to Khairi Jasipur. To his surprise, there was a forest guard waiting to receive him with a salute, and he welcomed him to Khairi Jasipur. The forest guard, detailed to escort me, took me to the guest house, put me in my room, assured that water was in the jug, I could sleep as long as I wanted, and Sab would see me as soon as I was ready. The forest guard took him to the guest house that is reserved for the guests of the forest department, and there he took him to the room where he could sleep. He also kept a jug of water for him and told him that he could sleep for as long as he wanted. And when he woke up, he could meet Saroj Raj Chaudhary, whom he refers to as Sab, or the officer. I think I had an hour of blissful sleep. After that arduous journey by bus, he slept heavily for an hour. Blissfully, he slept for an hour. But that's it. After an hour, suddenly he is woken up from his sleep. By what? What wakes him up from that hour of blissful sleep? It is the voice of the tigress. Khairi is outside his door, and he is immediately terrified. Like, he does not know that he has heard that it is a domesticated tigress, but he doesn't know how it will behave. He is a stranger, and in his eyes it is still a wild animal, a fearsome creature. I woke up with a start when I heard the unmistakable voice of the tiger just outside my door. Just outside my door, there was the tiger, growling, roaring. I was terror-struck. I was terrified to hear the tiger just outside my door. It came as an utter shock. Like, I was sleeping happily in my room, and suddenly there is a tiger outside my door. It's like a nightmare come true when you're haunted by the fear of a tiger. Within minutes, a bearer came to the room with hot tea and biscuits. However, within minutes, on hearing the tiger, and probably the narrator probably let out a scream of terror, and immediately after a few minutes, a bearer came. A servant came with tea and biscuits and assured him that it is perfectly okay. There is nothing to be worried about. There is nothing to fear. He smiled at the expression on my face and assured me that it was only Khairi outside the door, making friendly inquiries about the new guest in the house. So, seeing the terrified expression on Balakrishnan's face, the bearer, he smiled and said, "There is nothing to be afraid of. It is only Khairi making friendly inquiries about the new guest in the house." So, like a cat, like an inquisitive cat that will purr and mew in order to draw the attention of others, in order to express itself. Likewise, Khairi was also making noises and sounds to express interest in the new guest. And as the servant says, that it is completely friendly. There is nothing to be afraid of Khairi. It is a tame tiger. It is like a tame big cat, a domesticated big cat. I finished my tea, had a quick shower, and went to the main house. So, he finished his tea and biscuits, took a shower, and went to the main house to meet Saroj Raj Chaudhary, the man behind the legend. And Saroj himself is a legend. Let's find out. Saroj Raj Chaudhary was sitting on a large chair. He was sitting on a large chair, and there was a sloth bear behind him, holding on to his waist and making gurgling sounds. So he wasn't alone. First, the writer, Hariharan Balakrishnan, hears the voice of Khairi, and now it comes face to face with another wild animal, and it is a sloth bear. And what it is doing? It is holding on to Saroj Raj Chaudhary from the behind. Like a young child, it clutches its parents, like it holds on to the elders. Likewise, this bear is holding on to Saroj Raj Chaudhary. It is clutching him around the waist and making sounds like a child, gurgling sounds. He said, "Get down, Jambu, get down," and rose to greet me. So, when a child is holding on to the adults and the adults tell the child, "Get down." Likewise, Saroj Raj Chaudhary tells the bear, "Get down." And what is the name of the bear? It is Jambu. And rose to greet me. A frail man in his 50s, slightly balding on the top. So, he was in his 50s. He was over 50 years old. And he was frail. That is, he wasn't healthy enough. And he was slowly going bald on the top of his head. We got talking. And after the brief interaction, we started talking. After we greeted each other, we started talking. I didn't find a gruff and rough, no-nonsense man. So, the people whom the writer had asked for information about Khairi and Saroj Raj Chaudhary, they had said that Saroj Raj Chaudhary was a gruff and rough man with a no-nonsense approach, who tolerated no fools. But here, he was completely taken by surprise. Saroj Raj Chaudhary was one of the most human persons he had ever met. He was polite, courteous, affectionate, loving, and caring. What I found was one of the most human beings I had ever met in my life. So, he was one of the most human persons he had ever met in his life. So, the facts that he had gathered, they are proven wrong. So, what kind of a person is Saroj Raj Chaudhary? How did he become the legend behind the legend? We'll find out in the next class. But before that, we can discuss a few questions. How did the writer come to Bhubaneswar? And how did he go to Jasipur from Bhubaneswar? So, he takes a train and comes to Bhubaneswar. And from Bhubaneswar, he boards the bus to Jasipur. And he follows the precise instructions provided by Saroj Raj Chaudhary in order to reach Jasipur. And how did the forest guard receive him? He arrived at 4 a.m. in semi-darkness and did not expect anyone to receive him. So, the welcome provided by the forest guard was entirely unexpected. He greeted him, saluted him, and took him to the forest guest house, where he took him to his room and kept a jug of water for him. And why was he terror struck? Why did he wake up from his sleep in utter terror and shock? He had been sleeping for about an hour when suddenly he hears the noise of the tiger outside his door, and that fills him with terror and shock, and he wakes up. What did the bearer tell him about Khairi? Well, when the bearer comes to his room and sees the expression on his face, it is one of terror and fear. The bearer assures him that there is nothing to be afraid of. It is only Khairi making friendly inquiries about the new guest in the house. So it is like an inquisitive cat making friendly inquiries about a new person in the household. What was Mr. Chaudhary doing when the writer met him? Saroj Raj Chaudhary, when the writer went to the main house, Saroj Raj Chaudhary was sitting in a chair and he was with a bear. So he wasn't basically alone. He was playing with a bear. And what kind of man did the author find Mr. Chaudhary to be? Contrary to the inputs he had received from other people, he is surprised to find a human person. He had expected Saroj Raj Chaudhary to be a rough and gruff person, but instead, Saroj Raj Chaudhary is one of the most polite and affectionate persons he had ever met. So, in the next class, we'll be discussing about the story, how Saroj Raj Chaudhary found Khairi as a cub, how he raised it, and how it subsequently became a legend. That's all for today.